All right, guys, number 12, it says we have a line that is in the XY plane, and they say it passes through the origin. So when you see that phrase being stated, what you want to do is understand that they're just giving you a point. They're giving you the point 0, 0. Also, when you see the word line in a question, more than likely, they're going to be testing you on this equation. So y equals mx plus b. So just be aware of that when you see anything linear. So it passes through the origin, it has a slope of 1/7. So what we know at this point, now that I'm looking at it in terms of slope-intercept form, I'm aware that they just gave me the y-intercept, which is 0, and they just gave me the slope, which is 1/7. So the equation that I have is 1/7 x. So that's going to be my equation for this linear function. So it has that slope, which of the following points lies on the line. So I have my equation. I just need to find the point that lies on that line. If you go through this, all you're doing is plugging in points. The answer is going to end up being D. And the reason why is you're going to take that point 14, 2, and you're just going to plug it into your equation. So if I'm plugging in 14, 2 into that equation, the x is going to be 14, the y is going to be 2. So you're going to get 2 equals 1/7 times 14, which, as you can see, is 2 over 1, and it works. So number 12 is going to be D. And again, you just check all those answers until you see which one works in that equation. So that's going to be number 12. Moving on to number 13. It says if x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to this following expression? So here's the expression. Let me go ahead and write it real quick. Okay, so there's a few ways that you could solve this. One way would be to maybe plug in some numbers for x and see which answer works for that. I'm going to go through the algebra because I want you learning that algebra that they're testing you on, so that way no matter what scenario you get, you're able to solve this. So what we're trying to do here is get a common denominator on the bottom in the denominator. Like there's two denominators here, but I'm looking down here right now. So I'm going to get a common denominator. So I look at my two denominators that I currently have here, and I can see that they're not alike. So I need to multiply this fraction here by the x plus 2, because that's the factor that it's missing. Again, think of these as two separate factors. So this side is missing the x plus 2. This side over here is missing the x plus 3. So I'm going to multiply this by x plus 2 on top and bottom. And down over here, I'm going to multiply by x plus 3. Okay, so once you do that, we're going to go ahead and our denominator, again, when I say denominator, I'm just really looking at this fraction. I mean, it is 1 over all this stuff. But down here, the denominator is going to be x plus 3, x plus 2, or the other way around. It doesn't really matter. In the numerator, we're going to get a common, notice we have a common denominator, so that means this is now one big fraction. The first terms in this fraction are going to be the 1 times x plus 3, which is x plus 3. And then I have plus, and this is 1 times x plus 2, so x plus 2. So you take all this, and what we're going to do with it is just leave it as 1 over. Now we have 2x plus 5. This is all over x plus 3 and x plus 2. So now that I have all this, it is 1 over this, so we're going to keep, change, flip. So that means I'm going to keep the 1, so it becomes 1 times, keep the 1, multiply by the reciprocal. So x plus 3, x plus 2 over 2x plus 5. So we just want to see which answer choice matches that. And you look, the C and D obviously aren't going to do that. If you look at A, you'll probably see that isn't going to work. You'll see B, it multiplies out that numerator. So if you FOIL this out, you're going to get x squared, and then outside we have 2x. Inside here, when we multiply, we're going to get 3x, so that's going to add up to 5x. And then 3 times 2 is 6. And then my denominator is 2x plus 5. So you take a look at this, that's going to be answer choice B. So your answer for number 13 is B. So again, it's just getting common denominators, just kind of the concepts here, common denominators, how to add fractions, rational expressions really, and then keep, change, flip. We do that a lot on the SAT. So moving on, number 14. Number 14 gives us the expression 8 to the x divided by 2 to the y. Also, what they're giving us is the expression that 3x minus y equals 12. So this is what we're given. Okay, so when you see an expression such as this, this is going to be a prime example of using exponent rules. Right now, we're seeing two exponential expressions being divided. So the rule that we would be thinking of right here is a to the m divided by a to the n. Now this equals a to the m minus n. When you're dividing, you're subtracting your exponents. But in order for that to work, we have to have the bases alike. Right now we don't have that because we have an 8 for the base on top. But we can change that because I can write 8 as 2 to the third power. So this is 2 to the third raised to the x. Down on the bottom, we have 2 to the y power. So the other property that we can apply here is we can say, and this is just another exponent rule, is that a to the m raised to the nth power, it's called the power to a power rule, we can multiply our exponents because that's what we're going to do here. So I have a power to a power in this problem, so I'm going to write this as 2 to the 3x divided by 2 to the y. So this allows me now to finally use this quotient rule. So I can write this now as 2 to the 3x minus y. So this is just me doing exponent rules, and that's really what they're testing on this problem. So now we know 3x minus y, well that equals 12. So this, 3x minus y, is just going to become 12. So this is 2 to the 12. So this one, answer choice A is going to match that. So this is A for number 14. So again, mostly here they're testing your exponent rules. And there are other exponent rules that you need to study, but those are the two being tested on number 14. All right, moving on to number 15. Number 15 is giving us an expression ax plus 2, and I'm going to write this expression out real quick. Okay, so here's your expression given to you in number 15. Now what I want you to realize here is this portion here is in factored form. So we have factored, and then here we have standard form. And the problem here is these are in different forms. They're equal though, so if I was able to get them either, it depends on the problem too. If it was easy to factor this, I would go ahead and factor this because then I would know that A would be, one of the factors with the 2 in it, and then B would be the factor with the 7 in it, and I would have A and B if I was able to get these in the same term. This has that C, so it might be a little bit difficult, especially that 15 in front and the 14 at the end. It's actually going to be kind of hard to factor that. So our next best bet is to go ahead and multiply this side out so I can get the left-hand side, this side, into standard form so I can match those coefficients up. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this out. So that means I'm going to FOIL this. AX times BX is going to be ABX squared. My outside terms are going to be plus 7AX. My inside terms are plus 2bx, and my constant is 14. And again, remember this equals 15x squared plus cx plus 14. So now that I have this in standard form, I can just go ahead and take a look at my coefficients for my quadratic and my linear terms. Notice the constants are the same, so that doesn't matter, but I can use that to help me find a and b. So right here I know a times b, so see my x squared, a times b is equal to 15. I also know, if I take a look at my constants, or not my constants, sorry, my linear terms, I know that 7a plus 2b is equal to c. So this is kind of the setup that I have. Now this problem says a plus b, this is another piece of information given to us. We know that a plus b is equal to 8. So that leaves us with a couple of options here for a and b. I can go 4 and 2, 8 and 1. There's actually a lot of options, 5 and 3, but I want to find the ones that multiply to give me 15. So in this case, I'm thinking, well, a, I'll call 5, and b, I'll call 3. Those will add up to 8, And now that I have this written out, I know they multiply to give me 15. So I'm going to call A 5 and B 3. They may wonder, how do you know it's 5 and 3, not 3 and 5? Well, the question itself says, what are the two possible values for C? There's possible values because I can rearrange the A and B in a couple different ways. So they can be both ways. I'm just going to go ahead and plug this one in and see what I get. And I should get one of my possible answers. So I'm going to come up here and find C. So again, I'm taking this equation using my 5 and my 3. So I'm going to go 7 times A, so 7 times 5, plus 2B, so plus 2 times 3, and that's going to equal C. So that's 35 plus 6, so C is 41. So you look at your answer choices, the only answer choice that has a 41 in it is D. So that's going to be your answer. Notice I didn't even have to check the other one because this is the only one that works. So that's going to be your answer for number 15. All right, moving on. We're going to move on now to number 16. This is actually our first grid in. So here they're saying that t squared minus 4 equals 0. So there's your equation. Now, as soon as I see that, forget what they're asking me to do. I'm just going to go ahead and use the difference of squares factor. I'm going to factor this t plus 2, t minus 2 equals 0. So I know right now what t is. It's plus or minus 2. And that's without me even looking at the question. Now that I have that, notice they just said, what is the value of t? Now, be aware they said at the beginning that t is greater than 0. In a way, they have to say that, because you can't plug a negative in as an answer anyway because you don't have that option on your grid ins. So I'm just going to say t is 2. I had that solved before I even knew what the question was. Because I see difference of squares, I'm going to solve it. More than likely that's what you're going to need to do, and that's what we had to do here. All right, so that's number 16, and then number 17. Now, on number 17, when you see this picture, what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing a triangle and another triangle that are different sizes, but they're roughly the same shape. Now, if you see two triangles that are roughly the same shape, they're similar. It's a similar triangle question, which means we're going to be setting up proportions. So in similar triangles, the corresponding sides are proportionate, so these are proportion questions. So I know that, again, before I even read the question because of the setup. So in this case, they're telling me, now they give me this picture, they're saying the links represented by AB, EB, BD, and CD, so that's what the links are represented by, sorry. And so the links represented by that, so they're saying on the sketch are determined to be 1,800 feet. So they're telling me the links for AB is 1,800. That's what they're telling me. So I'm going to go 1,800 for AB. The length for EB is going to be 1,400 for EB. So that's 1,400. Next up, we have BD is 700. And finally, we have CD is 800. As I said, these are proportion questions. So once we have all these sides, we're just trying to set up a proportion with corresponding sides. Now, one of the sides we use for our proportion, one of the ratios, I should say, and then one of the sides we're going to be using, it's got to be this side here with the x. Because I got to solve for x. So I'm going to actually start there. I'm going to say one ratio. I'm going to do big over little. So I'm going to say x divided by 800. Now I'm going to set that equal to another ratio of corresponding sides. And they kind of gave you an extra side here because they want you to try to figure out which sides are corresponding. Now the trap answer would be to say 1,800 over 700 because these two sides are on top. But notice right here, they're giving you these angles. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, these angles are congruent, which means this triangle, these two triangles are flipped. So where the, if I want to use a 700 for my other side, for the small side, so I'm going to put that 700 here because that goes, notice with the smaller triangle, I'm going big over little equals big over little. So the big side that corresponds to that 700 is actually the 1,400. Again, because notice that's the side next to this congruent angle, just like the 700's next to that congruent angle. So those are your corresponding sides. Simplify this a little bit, you'll see that that's just 2 over 1. So the side on top is twice as big as the one on bottom. So again, if you did it this way and you did cross product, you'd get x times 1 is x equals 800 times 2 which is 1600. And that's going to most likely be your answer. Just make sure that's what they want. They say, what's the value of x? So that's going to be your value of x. So that's going to be number 17.